Mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Reg Hunter. I'm the Senior Program Director at Fiatech. We have some interesting topics to cover today in this webinar. First thing we'll provide is some demographics with respect to the people that have registered for the webinar. We'll provide you an overview of a new concept that we have for an integrated project dashboard project within Fiatech. And we'll also provide information on performance metrics and dashboards that from concept to practice in the nuclear industry. First, a safety moment. As new technologies are emerging, many companies are adopting it and embracing it because they're finding increased productivity. The safety moment is to consider that your employees could become so enamored with the technology that they lose sight of good practices for protection and safety, and so be aware of that. From a demographic standpoint, as all of you know, when you signed up for this webinar, you were asked a number of questions, and these are the responses. I've highlighted in percentages the yes and perhapses on the far left-hand side, and you can read each of the responses that you provided. What's interesting about the data is that a large percentage of you feel that you have moderate to high understanding and expertise in data mining, and expertise in establishing performance baselines and optimizing KPIs, which is a critical component to this conversation. To me, one of the most compelling aspect of these demographics in your response is that 96% of you feel that adoption of common KPIs and dashboard would benefit the capital projects industry, and 74% of you expressed an interest in potentially participating in our integrated project dashboard activities, assuming that that's going to be approved by a Fiatech project committee. With respect to organizations and companies that have registered, on this slide you see the different companies that have registered. In blue you see the Fiatech members, you see the companies that express specific interest in continuing to consider participation on the integrated project dashboards, and the companies whose names are underlined are companies that are currently Fiatech members. And so some of you during the registration process were unsure of whether or not your company was a member. If you look at this slide, you should be able to find yourself and make a determination as to whether or not you're a member. If you want more information, please send me an email at hunter@fiatech.org, hunter@fiatech.org, and I can answer any questions you may have. What's interesting about these companies, there's over 72 companies here. What's interesting is if you think about the cross-section of expertise that these companies bring to the table and their interest in integrated project dashboards and dashboards in general, you can see why it works out really well within Fiatech to cultivate understanding and insight using these kinds of resources. So the integrated project dashboard is really a consolidation of a variety of other activities that are going on within Fiatech. There's a major project within Fiatech called Advanced Work Packaging Information Mapping, AIM. There's a huge number of people involved in this, and what essentially it does, and I'll show you some more slides on it in a second, what essentially it's focused on is looking at the kinds of information that's necessary to be able to make effective decisions in a timely way. And there's a predictive performance indicator project, which is just finishing up. Will be briefed at our members meeting in October, which is essentially a new technique that allows you to anticipate future events before they come about. And lastly, the way through the storm is by engagement with wayfinders who can give you the insights about what is the best way to go and what has proven to be successful, and similarly, what has proven not to be successful. From an integrated project dashboard standpoint, I was asked to revise and clarify the original presentation to include a few slides about this. And so the purpose of the IPD project is to provide a framework for organizing and harmonizing project monitoring and control dashboards, also to define and align dashboards to optimally support functional areas with decision-driving insights and actionable information. And the last purpose of the IPD project is to increase predictive capabilities to anticipate the likelihood of future events so that preemptive avoidance measures can be taken early. The approach is essentially to leverage off of our AIM project, which has detailed understanding of workflows and information flows and information resources, leverage the predictive performance indicator project and methodologies and tools to essentially provide better anticipation of future events, capitalize on our subject matter expertise, and I'm calling them wayfinders because they do find the way, to clarify functional needs and optimal approach, validation, and adoption, and then organize IPD activities into teams because this is a fairly complicated problem to focus initially on materials and equipment status and availability. The reason we care a lot about equipment, materials and equipment status and availability, which would be the first target for the integrated project dashboards, is because it really represents a convergence of a lot of activities leading up to installation of materials at a construction site and ongoing support. And so the reason behind it is that Construction Industry Institute studies have shown that materials and installed equipment can comprise 50 to 60% of a project's total cost and control upwards of 80% of its schedule. Similarly, 70% of projects in an energy industry survey conducted by Accenture failed to meet budget, and 85% failed to meet schedule. And so there's a rich opportunity here for us to essentially provide improvements through the use of integrated project dashboards. So I mentioned previously that there's teams that make sense to be organizing around. And so on the left-hand side in green, you see IPD teams. There'd be one team that would be essentially focused on analytics, integration, and visualization methods and tools. And then there'd be functional area teams that have expertise and understanding in the areas that you see here. So from a project participation standpoint, if you're an expert or you have expertise or even interest in any of these functional areas, those might be good candidates for you to consider to be involved in. The integrated project performance dashboard is really an interesting way to achieve a higher level of visibility and control. And it's essentially a hierarchical organization where you have layers that provide more indications of whether or not a project is having or an activity is having problems, and allows you to drill progressively deeper into it to find out what the source is of a potential problem. And so hopefully on the left-hand side, you can see the dashboard purposes, which is kind of a four-tier approach. And you can envision how information is gathered into level 3 and percolates its way up into element 1. You also can see that a lot of energy would have to go into really understanding the workflows and the information and what is actionable information and what is necessary from a KPI standpoint in order to make the dashboards work, which is why the integrated project dashboard activity that we're pursuing is so important. So from a IPD project formation timeline, we've already met with key stakeholders, both owners and EPCs and technology providers, and other projects such as AIM and PPI to develop a strategy and approach to realizing integrated project dashboards. We're providing this webinar September 6th to introduce IPD and highlight similar activities that have taken place in the nuclear industry. So you see where we are. My hopes are that you'll be able to consider coming to our members meeting, where we'll be identifying and organizing IPD teams, leads and contributors, refining the approach, refining deliverables, agree on a project advancement plan, review existing dashboard methods and practices, and brainstorm as to the validity of using influence diagrams as a means to essentially capture the landscape of uncertainty with respect to any type of decision that you have going on. And then after that, we'll generate an IPD project proposal for Fiatech review and sponsorship. And obviously after that, we'd be doing the IPD project execution. So I kind of showed you some cartoons earlier. What we essentially have is you have subject matter experts, but more importantly, the best way I think to think of these people is that they're wayfinders. They've already gone down many paths. They have a wealth of experience on what works and what doesn't work. And when you get them all in a meeting together and you get them talking about the challenges that they faced and overcome in a variety of ways, it's really heartening to see that there is subject matter expertise that really is focused on finding a way through the storm or a way through the maze as shown here. Influence diagrams is a method to essentially show the landscape of uncertainties and how the interactions of these uncertainties affect each other as a means to essentially visualize all the factors that go into an activity that could essentially enhance it or jeopardize it. And so when you have the subject matter experts or the wayfinders in a meeting and you have them discussing about all the interactions of all the uncertainties, what you really have is a way to depict the landscape of uncertainties and interdependencies associated with whatever activity you have ahead of you. Fortunately, many of our wayfinders have a wealth of experience in developing and implementing dashboards and using them for day-to-day operations. And so what's nice is they bring to the table these insights and these experiences and lessons learned. And so from a project standpoint, we're able to essentially accelerate our way through these issues and identify what is most compelling about a dashboard, what is superfluous information that isn't critical to achieving some objective, and what is critical information in order to make sure the project's on track or that particular activity is on track to support the project's needs. AIM, as I mentioned before, is Advanced Work Packaging Information Mapping. It's being run by Shell. There's two dimensions to it. There's the industrial side that's being run by Hatch, and then there's the institutional and commercial side, which is being run by Kaiser Permanente, and which is what you see on the right-hand side. And because AIM is so complicated, essentially a WBS structure was defined for all the different types of activities, and teams have been formed with respect to the activities that you see in the lower left-hand corner. The output of these groups varies depending on the nature of the work that's being done, but typically you can have an example like on the right-hand side where there's AIM 5.1, where it shows the structural steel details and it shows essentially the workflows of how information is migrated from point of creation all the way through to the workplace planning. And there's a group at CII at the Fiatech meeting that wants to talk about how do we go to the next step and hand off characteristics associated with the craft in the field. Predictive performance indicators is another project that we would be leveraging on this integrated project dashboard project. Sorry for that. Where predictive performance indicators are substantially different than a traditional KPIs, and arguably KPIs tends to look in the rearview mirror, collects data and shows you sort of discrete characteristics and lets you compare that to other events and see and infers sort of where you're at. And what's different about predictive performance indicators is it's very analytics, and it's essentially uses sort of virtual human brain type functions where neural networks where you train on historical data and you use that in order to anticipate future events before they happen. We've completed phase 1 and phase 2 of PPI, and we'll be reporting out on that at our members meeting in October. So in summary, the integrated project dashboards is essentially an interesting new project that I'm hoping you'll be interested in participating in. I think we've reached consensus adoption. I think the highlights are as adoption of common KPIs and dashboard has been considered to be desirable. 96% of you consider that to be the case. Excuse me. Interest has been expressed potentially in potential IPD participation levels as 56 companies and organizations are interested. The critical complementary projects are already in place, the advanced work packaging, information mapping, and predictive performance, and that'll enable the next generation of dashboards. Wayfinders are available. They're ready to drive and engage and move to an optimal solution. The important point here is that we have a member meeting in October, from October 7th to 9th. I would be great if you could register and attend the meeting, and I appreciate your time. If you have any questions or comments, please contact me. Again, my name is Reg Hunter. I'm the Senior Program Director at Fiatech. My email address is hunter@fiatech.org. Again, that's hunter@fiatech.org. Now we'll have a presentation from DevonWay. Thank you.
We are very experienced in helping and assisting and working with our own customers in working towards common metrics, common standard KPIs, and consensus building within the common KPI infrastructure. We've done a whole lot of that work within the nuclear power industry. A number of our customers tend to be nuclear power operators, and over the last few years, a number of those sites really have come together to work towards a common set of indicators. And so we thought, let's talk a little bit about that, go through some of the lessons learned, some of the experience that we've seen in coming together and developing standard common KPI libraries, and present that to the Fiatech membership in general support and collaboration of the Integrated Project Dashboards initiative. So very quickly, for the remainder of the webinar, the agenda that we're going to follow is I'm going to give you just a very brief background and overview of DevonWay, who we are, what we do, what we're all about, talk a little bit at a high level about the technology and the tools that we provide our customers to execute and implement their common KPI standards. And then I'm going to hand it over to Tim Hermann. Tim is with the Ameren Callaway nuclear site and is the manager of the STARS Council. And I'll talk a bit about STARS, and Tim will talk a bit about STARS too. And Tim will go through and walk through some of the background and where STARS is right now with regards to coming together and standardizing their KPIs. I'll talk a little bit about another group of nuclear sites that has undertaken a similar initiative. And then I'm going to hand it over to our Chief Technology Officer, Steve Johnson, who's going to give you all a demonstration and a review of our tools and technology that, again, these customers have used to execute and implement their KPI strategy. So very quickly, we were founded in 2005, and we invested internally in developing an agile development platform. We refer to that generally as Your Way. And what that allows us to do is to build enterprise application products, largely workflow driven, to manage various business processes and business analytics to help our customers manage their various programs, including their KPI programs. So to roll out a DevonWay product doesn't require any programming. It's just a matter of configuring some business rules, and typically our application and our delivery lifecycle is less than 100 days from when we kick off a project until go live. So we're able to very quickly meet our customers' objectives, meet their requirements and their specifications, and we're also able to very quickly implement change. And when we're talking about bringing together large groups of autonomous organizations who are collaborating on these various initiatives, being able to very quickly implement change is an important part of what has been helpful with regard to driving this project and these KPI standardization projects towards success. So when you roll out a product, when we build our own products internally and then deliver them to our customers, which also include various types of custom applications and custom solutions, all of those apps are running in a single point of entry, in a single consolidated dashboard that includes everything that you would expect or you would want with regards to enterprise software governance and management, things like field and role-based security and being able to segregate data by different business units. But I'm not going to start talking about all of the features and functionality of our platform. Really, I just want to give a general sense of where our value proposition is and our role as far as where DevonWay fits into the equation. So our platform is at the heart of the KPI standardization initiative for 16 different nuclear sites. And I'll show you, the next slide shows you which nuclear sites those are. And just before I get into that, what we're looking at here is a list of our most significant product areas where we've delivered various enterprise functionality for our customers. And there are our marketing guy. We put way on the end of everything. So we've got WorkWay, for example, to manage work orders and work packaging, and ActionWay is our product to manage corrective action programs and incident reporting and environment and health and safety, accidents and injury reporting. So not going to get into all of them, but the one that's highlighted there is DashWay. So DashWay is our product that lets our customers define their own key performance metrics, organize and consolidate those key performance metrics into different functional areas, and also insert and manage all the various types of inputs and calculations and goal thresholds and predicted values all of the other details and components that feed into what makes up the construct of a KPI is done using our DashWay product. And so then what our customers do is they take DashWay, they roll out their KPI definitions. On a monthly basis, the different owners, if they have to manually enter data, or in many cases the data will be entered automatically through a third-party interface, DashWay manages the data collection, and then it's got a workflow where, based on the performance and based on the monthly or quarterly values for some of the key metrics compared to the goals for that period, might require an action planning and a review step. And DashWay also manages that workflow all the way from initiating that record to gathering and feeding the data into the metrics, and then progressing that individual metric or that functional area of metrics through its respective workflows. And then finally, that record is archived, and all of those individuals' metrics feed the dashboards, which we'll be showing you, to be able to review, analyze, and benchmark all that KPI data. So this is a list. As I mentioned, our customers generally are in the energy industry. We do have some EPC customers. I know several of them are Fiatech members. That's neither here nor there. But in any case, what I want to point out here on this slide are these two sections on the right half of the slide. The first one, where it says USA, and it's got 8 different nuclear sites. And you can see there American Electric Power, the Cook Nuclear Plant, OPPD, Fort Calhoun Station, DTE, the Fermi 2 nuclear site in Detroit, PPL Susquehanna, Energy Northwest Columbia Station, PSEG, the Prairie Island in Monticello, or I'm sorry, that's Xcel Energy. And then on the right is the STARS Alliance. And the STARS Alliance includes those 7 nuclear sites, or actually it's down to 6. For those of you all who are following some of the recent news in the nuclear industry, you'll know that Southern California Edison, the 5th one down, just recently announced last month that they're in the process of decommissioning their nuclear site down in Southern California. So they're no longer a STARS Alliance member. I just haven't updated this slide yet, so it's down to 6 sites. So both the USA sites, which is 10 different nuclear sites across 8 different operators, and the STARS Alliance nuclear sites have independently taken on the objective to standardize their key performance indicators across 11 or 12 different functional areas: engineering, maintenance, security, operations, performance improvement, and other key functional areas within the nuclear power operations. And both of those alliances use DashWay. Again, the DashWay product is the basis for executing and rolling out those indicators. And there are different stages right now in the process. STARS is a little bit newer, not newer I would say, but let's just say USA has been at it for longer. And USA, at least with regard to our technology, USA in 2012 they rolled out DashWay, and now they have their whole program automated across those 10 nuclear sites. And STARS is in the process of automating that program and getting all of their KPI definitions. And so Tim Hermann will be speaking next, and he's going to talk about the STARS Alliance KPI standardization project. And then I'll briefly just add a little bit of color from our experience working with the Utility Service Alliance to point out some of the key areas that they were looking to as far as benefits and value proposition for standardizing metrics. And then, as I mentioned, we'll hand it over to Steve Johnson, our CTO, and he's going to go through and give you guys a product demonstration of DashWay to see how we were able to make it all happen. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Tim. I've got your slides if you want to pick it up from here.
Great, thank you, Reg. As I mentioned, I'm Tim Hermann. Despite what the slide in front of you says, I'm actually it does say it correctly, the manager of the STARS Council. That's correct. As Reg mentioned, this alliance we put together here, it is new. We actually formed a company, an LLC company, in July of last year. So we've been monitoring performance. That's the entire purpose of forming an alliance like this, is to improve your performance from these nuclear sites. What we had done in the past was simply keep our metrics on scorecards or spreadsheets, and it's rather difficult. A lot of the input you have to manually do this, and some of the dashboard things that Red mentioned is automatically done by DevonWay. We have to do that all automatically at this point. Now we are in the transition stage right now to moving over to the DevonWay products. If you can move to the next slide there, Reg, I want to go through quickly how we go through these performance indicators, how we develop them, why we use the ones we have. We do have 13 functional teams, as Reg mentions, operations, maintenance, outages, and you'll see all those in a later slide. How we develop these indicators are really based on industry metrics. The entire industry, the nuclear industry, is overseen by an organization called the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, or we call it INPO. INPO has a set of metrics that they have put together for us, the nuclear industry, to measure our performance. So rather than reinventing the wheel in a lot of the metrics, we simply use the ones that they've come up with. And they're all primarily key performance indicators to show you how your performance has been versus forward-looking performance indicators that we discussed a little bit earlier. So some of the indicators that we have are more forward-looking, and there's some of them that are also key performance indicators to measure our performance. But again, they're all based on industry metrics, and as the industry changes, we all need to improve performance. We don't want to stay stagnant. So as we move forward, the bar raises. So we do have the need to potentially each quarter move those performance metrics up a little bit. So we need to change the results of those. If you can move to the next slide, I'll give you an example of one of our scorecards that we're keeping currently and the associated performance metrics with that. And you can see on the left-hand side there what we measure, in this case, radiation protection. I won't read those to you, but those are all industry metrics. The scale is an industry metric. Now, again, we look at these same metrics that our Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, our watchdog, performance watchdog, uses. Now, typically, we will scale these up and make them a little tighter for us. So we want to make our lives a little harder on ourselves. So when the INPO folks come in and start looking at us, they're going to see that we're trying a little harder. In other words, an indicator that they may show as yellow, we may show as red. So we try to drive our performance a little bit by that means. What we do with each of these 13 slides, like you see right here, 13 scorecards, is we have to take all that information and manually upload it to a dashboard. An example of that, if you could move to the next slide there, Reg. There we go. See across the top there, and again, these are all manually entered right now. The blocks you see at the top, the four on the top, we have the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations rating, and that's a rating between 1 and 5. And so the numbers in the lower portion there show the last 3 quarters. That's the scale there. So all this information here that we do manually now will all be done automatically when we turn DevonWay on live for us. And down below you'll see the 13 functional teams I mentioned earlier, and this is a convenient way to see how performance has been, where it's going, which one of those functional teams are moving in the right directions, which one have declining performance, and which ones are stagnant. Again, this is time-consuming, a lot of labor involved in doing this, and with the DevonWay product, the intent is we'll have a group of people at the sites inputting the data, and Reg mentioned the workflow. We'll have inputters that input the data from individual sites. And again, this is the same information that we already provide to the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations. So it's not an additional workload for anyone. It's just simply you're putting it in 2 different places. So that's the first part of the workflow, is the data input. The reviewers also, or the inputters also have to, whenever there's a red indicator, and you can see several of these performance teams have red on them, individual metrics will say if you are red in, give an example of industrial safety, maybe your accident reports are high or red. So the individual site has to provide an action plan, how you're going to improve that over the next few quarters. So that's also part of the workflow. The next part of the workflow is a review to make sure all the information has been input correctly and agreements with the action plan. And the final portion is an approval section, and that's typically done by the functional area manager for that particular team. So that's how our workflow goes. There are also a couple of other things that we like to do, but it's, again, a lot more labor intensive to do it. Reg, if you can move to the next slide. We want to know how each of the functional teams individually are going and be able to graph that out. So we put together another spreadsheet which shows the individual functional teams. Take the top one there, chemistry. You can see how their performance has improved from the second quarter of 2012 all the way up there, and then ability to graph it out, which you can do through a spreadsheet. And our intent here, obviously, is to be able to see this in a dashboard type setup where you don't have to do this all manually. And we also want to be able to measure how well the plants are doing. And the next slide will show you the same functional areas, but how they're doing with respect to each of the individual sites. So which ones here are having some problems, and they're also ranked it out. Again, this is all things that we do that are very labor intensive, and the intent of going with the DashWay is to be able to have the ability to input this information once and have it upload and have the ability to have the dashboard populated without having to do it manually. I believe that's the last slide.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, and we'll stop when we finish. We'll take questions at the end. So, to pick up where Tim left off, this is Matt again picking up from DevonWay. I'll add a little bit of color and commentary from the USA project, just to compare where they are and to contrast where they are relative to the STARS Alliance. So STARS has, they're focusing again on those IMPO indicators, which have already been established. And the USA sites have those IMPO indicators as well in DashWay. Now they've been live with DashWay now for about a year and a half. STARS is in the process of rolling out. They're going to be producing their Q3 management metrics report on DashWay at the beginning of Q4. They'll prepare their Q3 report. So that will be really when they'll be turning on DashWay as far as a communication and a analytics tool. And the USA sites are about a year and a half ahead of that. And the USA sites have also gone down to a more granular level. And along with those IMPO metrics that they're all tracking, they've also identified just about 200 separate departmental metrics, which represent a cross-section of what they felt and they believed were best practices and the strongest metrics that made the most sense for the 10 sites as a whole to adopt. And so in first quarter of 2013, just jumping down to that third bullet, because the first two were really just getting everything set up and getting the data in the system, that's when the USA piloted their first metrics package. And in second quarter 2013, just recently, is really where the stations are working, some of them fairly feverishly, towards adopting those standard metrics. So to put that into context as to what that means, and I know specifically I've worked fairly closely with a few folks at PSEG, and in fact the chief nuclear officer at PSEG, a gentleman by the name of Tom Joyce, he's one of the key people within USA that's just putting the hammer down and saying we need to be using the same metrics across all of our departments. There's no reason that we should be using our own versions of metrics that in many cases are very similar. And then when we want to benchmark against each other, we need to go and use the generic indicators anyway. And so now I've got my own site-specific ones, and then I've got the common KPIs that USA is adopting. It just doesn't make any sense. I just want one set of indicators, and it's going to be the common USA indicators, and that's going to be it. And so really in 2013, it's been this trial and error process at some level, where they've got those 13 functional areas, and it started as 11. They've got 13 functional areas now. they meet, they have a conference call once a month, and then they get together in person on a quarterly basis across all 10 of those sites. And one of the items that those functional area teams always discusses when they get together is how do they all feel as a group about the metrics that they've adopted? Are they working? Are they not working? Can they improve them? Can they change them? What sort of challenges are they finding internally as far as how they used to measure performance versus how they're measuring performance now? Because they want to make sure that they're getting the best of what's out there, and they're using all of that industry operating experience to benefit the alliance as a whole. And so they've got close to 200 KPIs now across, it started as 11, now it's up to 13 categories or functional areas. And these are a few sample engineering indicators, just to show what they've sort of come together on in one area. They've got these unplanned shutdown LCO entries, critical component failures, safety systems. And one of the things that you can't see on this slide, but along with the specific definition, because what they found, and I imagine this would be similar in the capital projects industry, is they would have a certain metric that if you looked at the name of the metric, you would consider it to be the same, and they would find that it's really not the same. For example, one of the indicators that they track is the average number of days that an incident report is open. And that was the name of the metric, and they all got together and said, okay, well, we track that one. That should be one of our standards. But one of the sites, they would track that indicator from the date that the incident report was entered into the system. Another site would track it from the date of the actual incident or the event. Another site wouldn't include their low-level condition reports, only their higher-level condition reports that required some sort of a root cause or an apparent cause evaluation. So the definition itself, when you really dig into it, they weren't as similar as they had initially seemed. And even in cases where there was a lot of overlap, the goals that they had set up for themselves weren't the same. And so some of the sites said, well, our goal is to have the average number of days a condition report is open for 30, and another site, their goal was set to 25, another goal site was set to 35, and so they had different goals, and when they were adopting the same set of standard metrics, they also, as part of that process, were adopting the same set of goals. So with that, their past performance now relative to the new goals had to be something that they took into consideration when their station management reviewed their performance on an ongoing basis. So I posed a few questions to the lead of the USA Engineering Functional Area team, and said, why is it so important that the USA Engineering fleet have these common performance indicators? And you can see I'm not going to read off verbatim, but the answer he really came back with was really it allows them to benchmark, just as Tim was talking about, how they could benchmark effectively with each other, they could hold each other accountable, they could communicate and collaborate with each other to find out what sorts of actions other organizations had taken to turn around performance in areas where they felt they had a similar type of a turnaround initiative. And once they were aligned, they could work together towards mutual success. So the second point there, how did they align on a common set of engineering indicators? And it's an opportunity to consolidate. They found that once they were running a common set of indicators, everything simplified itself in the sense that they started off with just a benchmarking component and said, well, we want to benchmark, so that means we need these metrics. But the sites didn't change their existing metrics. And so they were juggling two different versions, two iterations. They were trying to figure out where there was overlap. And that just wasn't working well for anyone. And so this allowed them to consolidate and eliminate. Also knowing and having the confidence that all the work that they're undertaking to manage their KPI program, which can be at least one, if not two, full-time resources at some of these sites, all of that work is not in vain by tracking the wrong things. They know they're tracking the right things because they're working together. And then finally, what single KPI do you find most useful? And the answer immediately was Equipment Reliability Index. And this is one of the ones that Tim was talking about that is an IMPO metric, and it's an aggregate of a number of other areas that roll up to this index, Equipment Reliability Index, that the industry really looks at as a general indicator of their engineering department performance. So you can see at the end, this KPI tells it all and quickly exposes any gaps and vulnerabilities. This is just a benchmarking. It's similar to that Excel spreadsheet that Tim had up. It's just, what's different in this case is that it's all done automatically. There's they don't have to manually put together this particular benchmarking dashboard. It's produced automatically by DashWay, and they can see the sites along the top and then the specific metrics going down. And this is one example of different types of dashboards and analytics and matrices that the USA and STAR sites and our other customers who are running DashWay are able to leverage to help with their decision making. So with that, I'm going to hand presenter rights over to Steve Johnson, who will give you a demonstration of our DashWay product.
All right. Can everyone see my screen? It is it's a dashboard with some tiles on it. So I guess you can't respond back to me. I guess I'll have to assume that you can. So this is the kind of a logon screen that any one of our DevonWay users sees when they log on to DevonWay. And of course, depending on what applications they're running, they can see lots and lots of things in addition to this. But if I happen to be someone who's participating in KPIs, I may see a dashboard that looks something like this to begin with. Now from there, I can navigate to a lot of different places. And this is the stuff that we put together for the STARS organization. We met in Phoenix for 2.5 days with a representative of each one of the sites. And in 2.5 days, we put together all of the metrics that Tim showed earlier. So this happens to be one example of what Tim showed earlier. The category here happens to be radiation protection. The measures that they collect information on for radiation protection are all right down the side. Then each one of the different sites that participate have a column in this chart, and this chart's now available automatically for them based on the work we did in 2 different days. And this happens to be radiation protection, but the categories are all of the ones that Tim talked about before. Now this happens to be a look at one of the functional areas, and similarly there is a set of charts that looks at the across functional areas, so that you can see at a snap or at a glimpse what the overall process or the overall state is for USA. I'm sorry, for STARS overall, and then you can drill down on each one of these things to look at the details below it. So if I drill down on radiation protection, I can now see the radiation protection values for each one of the different sites. So that's kind of the end of the output of a quarterly's data collection. You can take a look at the world from an overall perspective, or you can take a look at the world from a functional perspective and see how the different organizations fare in this. There's ranking across the bottom. It's color-coded, indicating how it is each one of the organizations affairs across each one of these dimensions. But as I said, this is the end of the process, not the beginning. In the beginning of the process, every quarter we wake up and we generate what we call objects. And data collection objects look like this. And if I happen to be the person, if I happen to be the radiation responder for the Callaway site, on Q113, I would get an object that shows up on my dashboard here in my assignments that says, hey, Steve, please go and either enter this data or upload this data if you happen to have it in some other form. So I would go in and I'd put in my values. We get a total score for my particular site across all of these areas. And as Tim mentioned before, anything which is red, they also ask me to enter what are the gaps I'm seeing in my area and what are the recovery plans that I seek to bring myself out of red. They can also enter this information for each one of the other collection points, but we only require it for red, or the way they've set it up only requires for red. Of course, every customer sets this up differently. Some require comments, gaps, and recovery plans for yellows as well, but that's entirely up to each organization. And then ultimately, you've got an enunciator that says, hey, how am I doing overall? You can pick any one of these things to be represented as an enunciator. We offer 3 enunciators. They only happen to be using 1 right now. Now, this value right here, this 63.3, should correlate for Callaway in here. The Callaway, I see where's Callaway on here? Okay, here we go, 63.3. So Callaway is right here, and this number right here corresponds to the data that was collected and entered individually by this particular site. So it's automated in the sense that every quarter, in this case quarter, many other organizations do monthly, some even do not a greater frequency than that. We wake up, we generate this object, we send it to the right organization for capturing the data. The workflow then sends it on for a person to respond to it, and then ultimately it's sent to a high-level manager for final comments. Now, as I said, each one of these objects is generated, sent to a plant, and then when all of the plants have responded, there's one that comes overall for stars, and then there's a functional area lead for stars overall, which then takes the collective data from both collective data and comments and recovery plans, and then completes this for stars overall, and then this becomes part of a report that the stars organization sends out. So overall, for Q113 for radiation protection, the stars organization overall is sitting in the yellow category at 71.5. That was built up of all of the data that was individually collected or entered by the individual plants. So these objects get generated, sent out. We then aggregate them into charts that look like this, and once again, there can be charts across any one of the areas. We can also take a look at charts by specific workflow steps. So if I only want to see things that has been things that are closed, I can also just very quickly take a look at the data to see who's been through the process, and I can see right now this is just test data, but only 2 of the plants have actually completed their work, both from an entry and analysis perspective for Q113. And I mentioned before that each one of these gets rolled up to a larger across area look, which we have a historical look as well, and you can drill down to see information by specific areas, and then you can also drill down further to see how did this particular plant do in their particular areas. So with just a couple of days of work, we built all of this, and it is now ready to be turned on in production for the STARS organization. So starting the next coming quarter, we will be collecting all of this information and presenting information this way for the STARS organization. So this is one example. It's one of many examples, but I thought it would be worth showing because it matched well directly to what Tim showed before. It's no longer spreadsheets with hope that people fill them out and hope that people don't change the values. This is now collected completely through a database mechanism where we can tell who did what, when, what's changed, who changed it. All that kind of stuff is completely automatically available through our DevonWay tools, along with many, many other things, including if I was interested to do some further data analysis trending across any of these pieces of data, we offer that completely as well. So all of this data, once it's in the system, can be analyzed in a much more granular detail by anyone that has access to this. I'll get to that in a bit, but this is one example. I want to turn my attention to another example. So this is a cross-company, cross-organization look at the world. Also, individual organizations do this in great detail as well. So this is another view of the world. This happens to be for one of our specific customers, not across organizations, but within one organization, and they have many similar things. I think they have 500 different pieces of data that they collect, 500 different metrics. And for this scorecard right here happens to be for one plant. It happens to be for one functional area, which is performance improvement, and it's got many different metrics within it. And then we have across the top here, we have their individual departments. So, for example, if I'm the engineering program manager for this particular plant, and I want to see how I'm doing for my high-level quality for my what's the word I'm thinking of? It's the cause analysis. I can look right here and see what is the timeliness or what is the quality level for the specific metric I'm looking at here. I can also drill down on it and see exactly what condition reports made up or is causing me to go into the red zone for this area. So this, once again, is a slightly different scorecard for a different organization. Here, instead of having different companies across the top, they've got their different departments across the top, and they can drill into it and take a look at it. You can see there's a greater number of metrics that they happen to capture. They also have a similar look at the world where they can take a look at their world like this, and if I wanted to take a look at work management, planning and production, get a lower level view of the world on that, I can now see the individual metrics for work management. And then finally, I can drill down on this guy to see how did we end up with a score of 51? How do I look historically? So we get the real granular information about this particular period. You can see this organization also does things like they've plotted a forecast line. So they expect to be here, but they in fact are trending upward in their organization. So while their forecasts indicated that they would be here, they're here. So there's a fair amount of explaining to be done by whoever runs this particular organization. So that's all information is just available to them. They enter their data in a slightly different way. They enter their data in a more granular level as opposed to multiple dimensions at once. They happen to collect their data individually. For each individual metric, they collect a number of different pieces of data and then produce charts that look like this, for example, for collective radiation exposure, where the STAR organization collects one number. These guys have to collect the feeder information to it as well and plot it in different ways. So once again, it's just simply a by choice how it is you might want to do this. This organization takes a pretty deep dive in every one of their dimensions, whereas the STARS organization that reports across organization collects one number for things like this. So they've also got other ways to look at their data, and one of them happens to be by functional area to see how do we look across functional areas for each one of the important metrics. And once again, you can now drill down onto it and see how it is we stand here. And you can see that they're way above the 0 issues for regulatory responsiveness that they expected to be at. So that's just another company's way of doing it. They collect things pretty much the same way. They've got dashboards, things show up. People either enter data or it gets fed to them. Now, this organization is a little bit different in this way as well. This is not just a end of the quarter, end of the month look at the world. These numbers are actually updated and automatically aggregated every week. So I know exactly how it is I stand. If I happen to be a manager in a particular organization, I don't have to wait till the end of the month to realize that I've got a bad number here. I've got a little time, got a little runway to get myself back up into the good zone. So this is not just a end of the month snapshot. It's actually a weekly process where we aggregate these numbers and make people aware of them, not just at the end of the month, but more frequently than that, so that they've got an opportunity to do something about it. So as Red mentioned, this KPIs do tend to be a little bit of a rearview mirror look at the world, although this one's more frequent than just end of month. But these are important, in my opinion, because each manager knows exactly what they're going to be inspected on every month. So there's no surprises about the kind of things that the organization expects the managers of these areas to do, and what the thresholds are for good performance. Now, just knowing what my performance is at the end of the month is great, but I also want some predictive tools to be able to know when I'm getting into the bad zone. And we also provide a complete slate of capabilities for predictive analysis as well. So KPIs are important because they tell the organization what we are going to be inspecting them on and when we're going to be inspecting them. But from a management perspective, I want to know, or a manager of an area, I want to know how I can make sure I'm not in the red zone. So we've got a different set of tools for that. And I only have 4 minutes left, so I'm not going to take much time. But I wanted just to show you some output of the types of things that we can produce automatically. So this is one of this. Everybody has complete access to ad hoc reporting tools, and this particular organization Every day they produce a report that says, here's the accountability items that are due today by organization. So they produce this twice a day. Once at the first thing in the morning, it says, here's the things that I'm supposed to get done today. And they do it once at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, send this email out with this information that says, here's the things that we're due today that we didn't get done yet. So we better get on the stick and either extend the due dates for these or make sure we get them done. Those happens to be an example of something which is very simple, but it's very powerful because you set this report up, you set it up to be sent out to whom, when, with the information you want on it, and it just goes out. Another look at this world, and this tends to be more analytical, but they can take a look at individual pieces of information. This happens to be equipment calibration across time, where you can see trend lines and actual data for that. They can set up thresholds to say, if I reach a specific point over a expected threshold, send me an email right now and tell me where I'm going. This is predictive in nature. This is real time. This is the system looking at combing through, lots and lots and lots of data every day, looking for trends, spotting points where we look like we're trending in the wrong direction, and then sending an email to the manager of a particular organization, letting them know, hey, you're trending in the wrong direction, and you ought to take a look at this right now. Lots of other ways to report your data. This is all available on an ad hoc basis and can be automatically generated based on thresholds, sent to people who need to take a look at it. They can be very complex in nature as well. This happens to be a graph, Pareto diagram for human performance observations by category, and shows some interesting information. So once again, while the KPIs overall tend to be end of the month or end of the period, look at the world, sort of a report card across expected dimensions, the other predictive or automatic reporting and routing alerting devices are available to managers to set up however they want and let them know what's happening in their world, so that at the end of the month they can in fact be green or white, or at least trending in the correct direction if they happen to be yellow or red. So in summary, I showed you what Tim's organization is doing across companies, very interesting stuff. I showed you another example of a particular company that measures a lot of different things, and they show their data across departments.
Steve, would you mind just passing it back to me quickly? I just want to pull up this one slide, and then we are open to questions. If you all have questions for either Reg, Steve, Tim, or myself, we would love to take those at this time. And I do have, for those of you that are interested in following up with DevonWay and to learn more about Dashway, either as part of the Fiatech initiative or independently of the Fiatech initiative, I did just want to put a phone number and an email address on there to, please feel free to reach out and to contact me, and we would love to talk to you.
So if you click on the chat bar on your control panel on the right-hand side, you can enter questions if you have any. You can send either Matt or myself an email. My email address is hunter@fiatech.org, and we'll be glad to follow up with you. Also, as I indicated before, you're more than welcome to come to a members meeting. We can discuss. We have multiple groups getting together in times for the AIM project at the members meeting, as well as for this integrated dashboards and for predictive performance tools, and we'd really like to see you there. So I think you'll see this project advance very quickly if it follows the template that AIM's doing, and it'd be great for you to get involved.